It was just this past June when an 8-year-old black girl was selling water on the streets of San Francisco, and a white woman called the police on her for not having a permit. In May, just across the bay, a black family was having a barbecue in their backyard of its house in Oakland when the police were called by their white neighbor. Just last month, a white woman called the police on a black child who she falsely accused of groping her in a Brooklyn deli. But those are far away. Those are blown out of proportion. I definitely hear you. This is Elias Romero II. Make sure you include the second to avoid his wrath and rent of being like his father. And he is Mexican American. He was born in San Jose, went to school in Evergreen Hills, and studied aviation science at Embry-Riddle. On the daily, he's spoken to in broken Spanish by a white woman and white colored man. He doesn't even speak Spanish, though. He has lost track of the number of times he has been pulled over, thrown on the ground, handcuffed, and searched, but he was let go every time because he wasn't the man they were looking for.
These are all incidents in which one's implicit bias was explicitly shown through stereotypes against black people of color. Historically, our society has a view of colored men and women and children of being devious, evil, and aggressive, but these biases are more often proven false than they are proven to be true. Here's what the Royal Science, a scientific and historical review site, has to say about implicit bias.
It makes snap judgments of people we meet, categorizing them according to gender, social and other characteristics. In milliseconds, we judge whether somebody is like us and belongs to our in-group. These are the people we favour. So men might favour men, while women might favour women. However, we can belong to different in-groups, and we like to be part of an in-group that's powerful, which could mean a woman favouring a man over a woman. That's unconscious bias. All of us have it, and it colours our decisions without our realising. For example, research reveals that if I were a man, you would be more likely to be nodding in agreement right now because people pay more attention to a male voice. The Royal Society fosters excellence in science, but this can only be achieved if we select from the widest range of talent. And that's not possible if unconscious bias is narrowing down the field for non-scientific reasons. To lessen the impact of unconscious bias, which is easier for us to notice in others, we are raising the awareness of unconscious bias to members of our selection and appointment panels.
Implicit cognition was defined succinctly in 1995 by Anthony Greenwald and Menzarin Bonji as when traces of past experiences affect performances, even though the influential earlier experience is not remembered in the usual sense, that is. It is unavailable to self-report or introspection. In plain English, let me explain. Even without memory of our pivotal experiences influencing our biases, we act on and make decisions based on them. These decisions with a lack of accurate information impact those around us either negatively or positively, and can show their face in things as simple as where we choose to sit on a bus or as who we choose to hire for an important position. Everyone has previous knowledge, experiences, and schemas that they carry with them each day, and they feed their implicit biases. But what happens then when our school teachers hold these biases against our students? Teachers' ability and willingness to reject these biased thinking and stereotypes and the thinking that all students, no matter their race or background, can thrive is very critical. Camille Wilson, a professor in the Department of Educational Studies at the University of Michigan, conducted qualitative research about the detrimental impacts of teacher bias. She discusses that children who already lack resources are also more susceptible to being harmed by teachers because of their race and class. Wilson interviewed working-class and low-income African American mothers about their perceptions of their children's education. 9 out of 14 mothers touched on experiences with teachers that they recalled having harmed their child emotionally or physically. That's over 64% of the women interviewed. This is inexcusable. Teachers have great power to either promote or diminish their students' self-esteem. Bias is manifested in the way teachers instruct the class and treat their students. This can lead to reduced self-esteem, a lack of motivation to succeed, and expectancy effects. Expectancy effects are exactly what they sound like. Those caused by expectations of others. In 1973 research, Jerome Dusak and Edward Connell used teacher bias and expectations almost as one and the same. They found that teachers make decisions for students based on their subjective interpretations and expectations of said child, and this can in turn cause beneficial or detrimental effects for the child in question. These expectations then lead students to believe they can or they cannot succeed in school. In California, on average, white students graduate at a rate of 86%, but black students graduated at a rate of only 66%, and Hispanic students at a rate about 73%. Without a high school diploma, these students will earn about $200,000 less than high school graduates and almost $1 million less than a college graduate. These statistics show damning evidence that a perpetuated earning gap between white professionals and their black and Hispanic peers. So now what? The world is bleak and racist, and nothing's ever going to change. You're wrong. Project Implicit is a non-profit organization and network of researchers that is exploring implicit social cognition. Their research has led to new understandings of attitudes, stereotypes, and other biases that impact people's judgments and behaviors. Project Implicit uses their research to fuel practical applications. They put on lectures, workshops to discuss what implicit bias is, demonstrate it, and by using the implicit association test, they explore practical steps to mitigate implicit bias. While this is great, I think there is more we can do though. We need to use this model to address implicit bias in schools specifically. Teachers are lifelong learners and crave new informations. We can exploit this craving to our advantage and give them resources online and on campus to teach them about the both importance of the impact of implicit biases and the prevalence of this bias. In this education, teachers could take the implicit bias test and reflect about their own biases they may hold before they begin the school year. Teachers have an immense impact on our future generations, and cultivating inclusivity in their classrooms is huge. The positive classroom climate is necessary to mediate biased attitudes and support self-awareness and empathy. Dr. Elizabeth Day from Santa Clara University teaches mindfulness and empathy to her students. She suggests that we start this training in students from day one to try to mitigate the amount of biases we are fed from our first day in life in order to eliminate implicit bias, not only in teachers, but in other professions as well. Maybe, with this increased awareness of implicit bias and its impacts, people of color can feel safe without the permit patties, corner store Carolines, and barbecuing while black. People like Elias Romero II can comfortably drive down the street without fearing the police would be around the corner. Maybe, just maybe, we can create a world in which our students can feel comfortable in their classroom, where they are supposed to be safe and supported. Thank you.